Hello, my name is Esmeralda Galan, and this is my position paper on the importance of culturally relevant pedagogy. I will be referencing 4 articles, which I will include a reference, but just for the purpose of this video, I will just be mentioning the author's name when I mention the article. So to first let's start off by understanding culturally relevant pedagogy, which 3 prepositions are needed for it: academic achievement, cultural competence, and social political consciousness. And leaving any of these out cannot be considered a culturally relevant practice. So first we start with academic achievement. And for this means that student learning involves challenging students' minds, and this can help improve their ability to think. And basic skills and knowledge are integrated to make learning more meaningful, and textbooks are used as instructional supplements. They're not determiners of the curriculum, so they're just tools. And Hainsworth actually mentions this in his article, which goes something along the lines in regards to what teachers can do to have academic achievement in the classroom. And he says that to review learning and teaching from the perspective of the student, and to consider how individual students experience learning. And I think this is very important for academic achievement, because many of the times as teachers we forget what it was like to learn new things or to learn at all. I mean, as a student, I have a huge empathy for my students now, and what they are learning, because I totally understand the struggles that they might be going through. And so this is very important, because when we know that's when we have empathy for our students and they see that, they feel more at ease, which we know leads to better academic achievement. So I thought that was a great point that he made. And then we're going to move to cultural competence. And this cultural competence does not eliminate, replace, or denigrate students' home culture. It actually helps students grow in knowledge and understanding of their own culture while acquiring skills in at least another culture. And in Reyes' article, actually someone mentions this viewpoint where he talks about children from families who have immigrated to the U.S. And he says that making assumptions about any of these circumstances lead us down a path of pathologizing students for what is wrong with them, and focusing on what they cannot do and what is broken. So by having cultural competence, we do not denigrate our students' home culture, and we're very respectful about it. And I know that this can be very hard, especially when teachers are not very familiar with other students' culture. But I think it's very important that we don't make these assumptions, because children can definitely feel those assumptions. And I speak based on my own experience, because this is something that happened to me throughout my education, and it really had an impact on my academic achievement and how I felt. So I just think it's very an important point that he made. So we're moving on to social political consciousness, and this basically means that students are living in a world of politics. They need to understand the learning has significance, and it goes beyond the 4 walls of their classrooms, and that it's useful for them and the greater community education, and being aware of politics as well. And Reyes' articles mentions that this and says that given the way that American schools are organized, inequality and inequity are predictable, and the fact that people internalize the unequal and inequitable conditions of schools as normal and natural is a logical byproduct and of the social reproductive nature of ideology. And he also mentions that these pressures in institutions are strong, and therefore it is easy for a teacher to succumb to such pressures, because they are viewed as normal conditions in which to operate. And I can totally agree with that point, because I've seen it in my own workplace and in my own experience, that sometimes we are so used to the way that things are said that we just view them as normal and we don't challenge these things. But as teachers, it is definitely important to challenge these ideologies and not succumb to the norms, and definitely see if our workplace and our classroom environment are respectful of our students' needs and cultural. And moving on, the Silva article also mentions social political consciousness in his article about Latson Billings, and he writes that Latson Billings actually believe that a culturally relevant approach to teaching narrative inquiry helps students understand that there can be and should be learning connected to everyday problems of living in a society that is deeply divided along racial, ethnic, linguistic, economic, environmental, social, political, and cultural lines, and students should be learning that education can and should help alleviate those problems and divisions. And I think this kind of adds to my previous point about teachers questioning norms. And because if we create a space where students can debate, and respectfully, of course, and can talk about these things that are going around in the world, then see that their teachers are actively involved in creating that change, then that can be inspirational for them as well. And there's this quote that we have all grown up with, and it is that children are the future. And while I do strongly believe that, I believe that the future is created by the present. And so as teachers in the present now, we have to have these type of, we have to have a culturally relevant pedagogy, culturally sustaining relevant pedagogy in our classrooms to create that change. And it is important because if we provide these spaces for our students, and we get uncomfortable with the things, and we challenge ourselves to be uncomfortable and challenge the norms, then we can create that change, because our students will see that, oh, well, my teacher is, she's fighting for us, and she's fighting for our needs, and I feel respected in this place because of her. So when they move on, they will have this little seed in them, and then they can plant that seed in others and speak up and challenge those norms and question when things aren't right. And that's how change happens. It doesn't happen overnight, and we have to get uncomfortable, but it's something that needs to happen. And lastly, Paris's article actually makes a stance for a culturally sustaining pedagogy, and he says that the term culturally sustaining requires that our pedagogies be more than responsive of or relevant for the cultural experiences and practices of young people. It requires that they support young people in sustaining the cultural and linguistic competence of their communities while simultaneously offering access to dominant cultural competence. And I think this just really sums up my stance beautifully, because like I said, we need to have students feel confident in their own culture, because that will give them power, but we must also have students understand other cultures so that they can have that respect and that understanding for those cultures, and together we work to create that change that is so much needed in this world and society. And thank you, and that is it.